Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's been a little while since I made a video for you guys. I think I was a little bit traumatized after all the videos I made for the last tournament. It was fun, but it was a little bit of work. So yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do another tournament like that again because it was pretty tiring, to be honest, but fun at the same time and hopefully instructive to you guys. But I did come across this little 1 minute game that Nathan played that I thought would be really instructive for not only him but everyone that I'm teaching currently. So yeah, I wanted to give this game a fair look. It's pretty abnormal for me to analyze a bullet game. There's like kind of an expression that you shouldn't, analyzing a blitz game is kind of pointless. So I don't know. Like a blitz game is 5 minutes for 5 minutes for those who don't know, and a bullet game is only 1 minute for each side. So if analyzing a blitz game is a bit of insanity, I don't know what analyzing a bullet game is. But there was some interesting moments that I thought everyone could learn from. Yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever you guys enjoy is fine by me. I think you guys should play as much chess as you can. Playing 1 minute games, I don't think in the long run is going to be super beneficial. Like my recommendation is that you try to get as good at chess as you can by like some longer games, some serious games, and then after you get like a pretty good feel, like an understanding of chess, then you could try to play well quickly. But I think now the goal should be to play well, even if it takes a lot of time. And then once you understand the concepts, then you could try to get better. Try to do it faster. So I'm trying to think of something like I know like Sam, for example, is really good at Rubik's cube, and I know like Rubik's cube, the goal is to get as fast as you can at some point. But I think at first you should probably maybe Sam would be better, know more about this than me. But it seems to me at first you should like just learn how to solve the Rubik's cube in the first place, and then after that, then you should work on solving it faster. I don't know if the top guys in the world just like solve it as fast as they can, like as like the first time they ever pick up a Rubik's cube, for example. So I think the same concept applies to chess. Just like try to figure out what you should be doing in longer games, and then once you have like figured that out, then try to do it faster. Not just try to do it as fast as you can right away, because I think you won't improve as much because you'll especially if you're not really analyzing your games because you'll just kind of go on to the next game and not really learn from your mistakes like you should. But yeah, that was a bit of a long introduction, so let's get started. Um, yeah, I always forget to click this float on top. I know you guys can't see it because my screen doesn't show it, but there's like a float on top option which keeps the video on top of the screen. So when I click on the screen, the video doesn't go anywhere. So yeah, so here we have d4. So yeah, Nathan's been asking a lot about the Queen's Gambit, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make this video for him. I don't personally play the Queen's Gambit. I'm more of an e4 player, but I do know like some intricacies of this opening, of course. So yeah, here the idea is we're attacking the central square. We're allowing the dark square bishop to get developed. And like I've been teaching the students, I don't know if it's sinking in yet, that queen pawn openings are typically more positional than e4 openings. And the reason, and there's always exceptions in chess, but the typical reason for this is because the pawn on d4 is protected by the queen, so the pawn is naturally defended, whereas the pawn on e4 is not defended by anything. So at some point, white's going to have to do something about the fact that their pawn is not protected, which they could either like push it, for example, they could defend it. But typically, since the pawn on e4 is not defended at the start of the games tend to be a bit more open, which always kind of fit my style. But as I get older, I would say I've converted a lot more to positional play than when I was like Nathan's age and all the other kids' age. So here we have d5, just a symmetrical move here. So yeah, so here the pawn's attacking the e4 central square, the light square bishop can get developed, and we just have a perfectly symmetrical position. So here we have c4, which is the best move. So this is something that I'm also struggling to get across to the kids, but they're doing better. We're working on it, so I'm optimistic, but I do need to do a better job of explaining this. So in the queen pawn openings, when both sides move the pawns in front of the queen, typically we want to go for this c4 move. And the idea is we want to put the knight behind the pawn and put as much pressure on d5 as possible. So like for example, if we play knight c3 right away, this move might seem logical to the kids because we talk a lot about developing your pieces off the back rank and fighting for the center, which this move accomplishes. But the problem is after knight c3, we don't have a very good way to attack on the d5 square again. So like for example, if black just plays knight f6, it's very hard to get e4 in because there's two attackers and only one defender. And now we don't really have a really good way to ever put any pressure on this d5 square. Sorry, that was a. It seems to do this like misclick. Like when you click here and click here, it just does the move, even though I didn't really want to do that. But yeah, so here we already have the queen, which is a natural defender, and now we have the knight defending the d5 square. So it's really difficult for white to ever put any pressure on this d5 pawn. So it's very important that if we want to fight for this d5 center square, that we include this c4 move. So now at least we can try to get two attackers onto the d5 square. So we're going to play c4 and then the knight to c3. And this opening is called the Queen's Gambit. So typically black plays e6. And then some of my students have been curious about the semi-Slav or Slav, which is c6, which is also a really good opening. So the benefit of this c6 move is that the light square bishop isn't blocked. So you see, like with e6, the light square bishop is blocked in now. And then another idea behind c6 is that we're keeping the pawn structure symmetrical. So if white takes, then black just takes back, and now we have if you flip the board, it's the same exact position from either side. Whereas if we play e6 here and then the pawn takes, we did create an imbalance. So in this position, there's 4 pawns on the queen side for black versus 3 for white. And then on the king side, we have 4 pawns for white and 3 for black. So I'm not saying that this is like bad for black or by any means. I'm just saying that it's different in that we create an imbalance here. Like this position would be perfectly fine for black now. But yeah, here black played d takes c4, which is called the Queen's Gambit accepted. So if we play e6, we're declining the gambit. So this is called the Queen's Gambit declined. And if we take, it's called the Queen's Gambit accepted because we're accepting the pawn. And a couple of really great American players, Hikaru Nakamura and Fabiano Caruana, have played this as black. So it's still common in like the very, very top levels of chess. It's not super common. It's definitely not like as common as e6 or c6, but it's definitely a move. I will say that this expression Queen's Gambit accepted is a bit of a misnomer, meaning that it's not really a gambit because here white can play Queen a4 check, and they're also attacking the pawn. So the only way for black to defend the pawn and block the check would be b5, but this move just doesn't work because we just take the pawn anyway, and then next move we take the c4 pawn. So pretty much, yeah, whatever black does here, so any move here, we're able to capture the pawn next turn, and we're not down any material. But generally, white does play this as a gambit, so they will try to get better development. So just remember, anytime you play a gambit, the typical idea is to get your pieces developed faster than your opponent. So yeah, we're sticking to the 3 principles, right? We want to control the center, we want to develop our pieces off the back rank, and we want to get our king safe, which is typically done by castling. But depending on the position, if the position is more closed, we can hold off on castling for a bit. But this position could get open, so we do want to probably have the option to castle here at some point rather quickly. So here we have knight c3, which is one of the main lines, and then b5, which is a nice move protecting the pawn. So yeah, so the idea was that maybe at some point after the e-pawn moves, the bishop might want to take on c4 here. So here we played e4 by Nathan, and this is a really important point. Actually, when I was a kid, also this e4 move seemed a lot better to me. But actually, I think e4 is a playable move. So let me get that out of the way. e4 is fine, but I think e3 is actually a little bit more precise here, and it might be confusing because it's like, why are we blocking in the dark square bishop if we don't have to? But the idea is actually quite interesting. So here, if black plays this move c6, we actually can just take the pawn, and then after the pawn takes back, we have this move queen f3. And the reason why the pawn doesn't go to e4 is a bit more clear here, because with the pawn on e4, we're blocking the diagonal, but with the pawn on e3, the diagonal is still open. And here we're just able to just force the win of material here. So they can preserve the rook. The rook is trapped, but they can like give up the bishop, for example, and then move the knight here. But this position is very, very good for white. I think white is just clearly winning here because so now we shouldn't take the rook because the queen's defending it, but we do get this. We do get this nice juicy b5 pawn, and then we're also going to get the c4 pawn in either one move or, yeah, I guess just right away. So here we have the bishop and the queen attacking c4. So even if they play a move like rook to c8 to defend the pawn, we have more attackers than defenders. And yeah, this concept I'm still trying to get across to some of the kids, but I think, yeah, basically all the kids are getting better at this, but we still have some work to do on counting the attackers versus defenders. And yeah, here, even though we have 2 attackers versus 1 defender, we wouldn't want to take with the queen here first because the attacker we're giving up is worth less than the defender. So this would be the wrong move order because here we're losing the queen for the rook and pawn. So we definitely would want to take with the lower valued piece here, the bishop. And then if the rook takes, which this would be a mistake for black because the rook is worth more than the bishop. So after rook takes, the queen would take, and yeah, this would just be disastrous. And yeah, it's kind of a funny position. Like all these pieces just surrounding the king kind of leaves like a funny impression to me. So yes, all the basically all the queenside pieces except for this pawn have sort of moved and been captured, and then all these pieces sort of remain, which is yeah, I guess I don't need to highlight them again, but this is kind of a funny position to me. So yeah, so that's why e3 is considered a little bit more precise here, because we are allowing this queen f3 idea. And then if they play a6, I'm trying to remember what the exact move order is here. So this would be useful. So yeah, I don't really remember. I feel like I want to go to the analysis, but so I think the best move is a4 here. But I'm trying to remember what happens after b4. So because I know this is like one of the lines here. I'm assuming something like knight e4 is played. Okay, let's just open up the opening explorer. So here you play queen f3 anyway. So that makes sense. And then after c6, bishop takes c4. Okay, this line I wasn't that familiar with, to be honest. So yeah, might as well show this off because this looks like it's going to be a really nice finish here. All right, so queen f5 check. Queen a5 check. And then here we have, do we have bishop e6 at the end? Or we just go queen c3, queen takes c3. Okay, yeah, this line, yeah, I'm like I said, I'm not really a Queen's Gambit player, so I didn't know all the intricacies of this line ahead of time. I would be a bit curious if bishop e6 does anything. So the idea here is we're trying to deflect the king away from the queen. So obviously the king wouldn't take. So we could throw these moves in just to kind of be see if we can cause a mistake. So it never hurts if if you're able to just repeat the position, and if the moves for your if your opponent basically deviates from repeating the position, it's just bad for them. It never really hurts to throw in those moves into the sequence, because yeah, if the black king doesn't just go back, if they take the bishop, then they lose the queen. So this is kind of instructive. There's like some kind of Russian school of thought that says if you have a chance to repeat the position, you should do it. And the idea is basically you're just kind of reminding your opponent that you're in control of the game, which is it's like a psychological reason is the first reason. And the second reason is you do actually give your opponent a chance to go wrong, right? They could just have a hallucination and take the bishop, for example, and then you're just much better. So yeah, so this variation would have been interesting. And yeah, I don't know what the evaluation is here. So it looks like white is down a piece for how many pawns? Well, they have 7 versus 5. So we have five black pawns and 7 white pawns. So we're up to 2 pawns for the piece that we sacrificed. But more than that, it looks like the black king just looks really ugly, and it's not so easy for black to complete the development. Like for example, this knight has nowhere to move now. And in the meantime, if the knight can't move, it's hard for this knight is supposed to control these 2 central squares. Oops, sorry about that. d4 and e5. So if this knight can't move, it looks like something like knight f3 and then knight e5 is just going to be a really nice plan for white here. So yeah, so I would say that we have more than enough compensation. I'm curious what the computer evaluation is here. Let's see what the computer says. So computer is thinking, so just 0.5 up. So that's kind of interesting. So it looks like black can keep this a game, and probably it's plus 0.5 should be in the range of equality still, rather than white is winning by force here. So yeah, black can still hold on, but at the same time, white. I'd much prefer to play white here because their moves are easier to find. And that's one of the things with when you're evaluating with a computer, and I don't think any of the kids are really doing this much. Maybe some are, but you also want to be factoring like what position is easier to play. So just because a computer says like this is even or one side is slightly worse, the certain positions are just much easier to play than other positions, and that's just going to come from experience. That's kind of it's a difficult thing to teach that, I would say. You just have to kind of get a feel for positions that just happen to be easier to play. So yeah, and here if they play c6, then this would be a really bad move. So now we could just take here. I don't know why they're giving queen f3. I imagine that this is better. So here if the a pawn takes, we open up the a file and we just take the rook. And then here, if the c pawn takes, now we have this queen f3 idea. They can play rook a7, but here we just play knight takes b5 since this rook on a7 is not defended by anything. And then once again, if the pawn takes, we play rook takes, and we're just up the exchange, a rook for the pawn. And not only that, but our rook is quite active on a7, and it's not so easy for black to complete their development in this position. So yeah, this is just completely crushing for white as well. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to show in this e3 variation. So let's go back to the game continuation. So here Nathan played e4, which is also a main line. Let me turn off the opening explorer. Let's try to do this more organically. So a6, a4, really nice move by Nathan here. So he's trying to break up these pawns. So the idea of black playing this structure is to keep the material advantage. So right now black is up a pawn when they accepted the gambit by taking the c4 pawn. So the idea behind a4 is just to try to break these pawns up. And yeah, here I'm not like super familiar with the theory. I imagine like b4 is a move as here. But instead they played the c6 and then take, and this was the point of the game where I really wanted to talk to Nathan about, or I mean just make the video about and for everyone. So here we have an opportunity to open up the a file and take the rook here. So the best move for white is just to play knight takes b5, and if the pawn takes a knight here, we take the rook. So that would be bad. And then if they don't take the knight by playing something like bishop to b7. So this is a good move for black because it defends the rook, and now there's not a pin, because if the knight doesn't move, black can just take the knight, and after rook takes, the bishop will take. So white would just be down a piece. But here they have this move, just bring the knight back to c3, and now this c4 pawn is extremely weak now. So they could try to defend it with something like queen c7, but yeah, this pawn shouldn't last for very long. Like for example, I think if we just play queen a4 check right away, and then even if the bishop blocks to try to pick up a tempo, now we just pick up the pawn. Yeah, so basically any move here, if they play like knight to d7, we could play bishop takes pawn or queen takes pawn. Both of these moves look like they would work just fine. So yeah, so the main point here is once we're able to get this b5 pawn and we're able to disrupt this pawn chain here, now this c4 pawn is just weak for eternity, basically, because the b5 pawn was the only pawn protecting the c4 square, and once we get rid of that pawn, we're basically winning. So this knight takes b5 move is a really important move to find if you're gonna play Queen's Gambit, and you're probably gonna face the Queen's Gambit accepted on occasion. It's important to note these opportunities to open up the a file and take the pawn. Okay, knight f3, bishop d7. So yeah, bishop d7 was a good move from black. So I assume that black saw that this was a problem. So now knight takes b5 doesn't work because the bishop can take. And I think also they could play bishop b7 also has the same concept. Once again, protecting the rook. And now we're putting some pressure on the e4 pawn as well, which could be useful for black. So yeah, so I think bishop to b7 is probably slightly better than bishop to d7, I would say. Okay, so b3. Yeah, b3 is playable in some of these variations, just trying to once again break up this pawn chain. I don't think that b3 in this particular position looks so attractive to me. So I was thinking about something just like b4, and then the idea is if you play like knight d5 attacking the pawn, we could play e6. So now we're attacking the knight and we're also protecting the pawn at the same time. And then once the knight moves, say we go to f4 for example, something like c3. And now, yeah, these pawns are just going to be a pain to deal with for the rest of the game for white, because this is a protected passed pawn. So there's no white pawn that could stop this pawn from getting to c1. And not only that, but it's protected by the b4 square. So yeah, I think this would just be a real pain for white to deal with. And yeah, I think white is just much worse here. So yeah, I'm trying to. I don't remember what happened after b3. So let's look. So e6. Okay. And then, yeah, here I don't really understand why Nathan didn't just kind of cash in and get the pawn. So once again, it was a 1-minute game. So that's another reason why I'm not like such a huge advocate of like beginning players playing 1-minute games. Even with all my years of experience, I probably only played maybe like 20 1-minute games in my whole life. I know the world champion Carlsen plays like thousands and thousands of bullet games. So just keep in mind that's because he really has like a very, very deep understanding of chess already. and that's why he's able to play all these really fast games. It's not. I don't think when he first started playing, he played like bullet like basically ever. So it's only after he really kind of understood how to play chess very well that he started playing a lot of bullet. But once again, I know it's fun for the kids, so I'm not gonna do anything to discourage them from having fun playing chess. So if they want to play bullet games, it's yeah, it's not my decision at all. It's perfectly fine with me. But I do think that I do think it's not really the most beneficial for their chess in the long run. If I'm being perfectly honest, just because we're already missing these concepts, right? Like the point of moving the pawn here was to capture the c4 pawn. Black didn't respond to that idea of defending the c4 pawn, so we have more attackers than defenders. So we should just take the pawn here. I think. Okay, 95. Okay, f6. Okay, and this was another reason why I really wanted to show the game, and another reason why maybe bullet is not the best idea for the kids to play. So we talked about these kind of moves a little bit. I don't think it's something we talked about a lot in class so far, but this does open up this diagonal. So instead of moving the knight right away, the best move here is just queen to h5 check. So we'll look at blocking in a second. Let's just look at if they play king e7 here. So my first instinct when I was looking at this game is we want to play queen to f7 here because we're attacking the king again and we're driving the king out to the open. But then I realized after maybe say 10 seconds of thought that this is not, queen f7 is not the best move here. So so here we have the king on the dark square. And we have a good opportunity to play the bishop to a3. And now now there's nowhere for the king to move. So the only move they have is to block with b4, but the b4 pawn is not protected. So after bishop takes b4, we just have a checkmate. So yeah, I thought this would have been a nice. This definitely could have happened. This would have been a really nice combination if Nathan could find it. And in a 1-minute game, I don't think I would find this in a 1-minute game, to be perfectly honest. So that's the reason why, 5 minutes, fine, 10 minutes is great, 15 minutes, perfect. More than that, fantastic. But in 1 minute, you're just going to miss a lot of this stuff when you're first learning. And these are patterns that you want to spot because you're gonna face opponents in good competitions, good players that are gonna make these mistakes on occasion. And you want to be alert to finding them, right? So if you play a 1-minute game and your opponent makes a mistake and you don't find the idea, if you don't know the pattern already, maybe when you get in a longer game, you don't spot the pattern then as well. So you really want to kind of get in the habit of playing a time control where you're able to learn and make good decisions. Okay, so like I said, we're going to look at this g6 move. So after g6, notice that the h pawn is pinned, meaning that we could take the rook. So after knight takes, the rook is trapped, so they might play pawn takes knight. And yeah, typically we would play just queen takes rook here, but we actually have a better continuation here, kind of piggybacking off of the previous idea. So here we just play queen takes g6 check, king e7, and then once again we have this cool bishop a3 idea. b4 is the only move to block the check, and then we take, and that's checkmate again. So yeah, so after f6, we don't want to retreat the knight. We just want to take advantage of the fact that this diagonal is open. And this is an extremely common pattern. So finding this queen h5 idea, to me, I could find not to brag, but I could basically find this instantly because I've seen the pattern so many times. So after f6, you don't want to just instinctively retreat the knight, which is what happened in the game. If we play queen to h5, the game is essentially over. Like we probably could, there's nothing here to even suggest for black to do at all that I can see. The king can't even try to run away with e7 because it's under attack. If we move something like, if we do something like this, we could take here, and that's with check even. So now, I don't know why the arrow didn't draw there, sorry about that. So now if the king goes to f8, we have this checkmate in 1 here with the knight and queen working together. And if the king moves to e7, we have another, this bishop a3 move is really, really handy in basically every variation. And then, yeah, b4 is forced once again. And then we take with another checkmate here. So if Nathan would have spotted this queen h5 idea, the game would have just been over. There's really absolutely nothing that black can do after this move. So, but yeah, it's in a 1-minute game again. So it's really natural that you're just going to be reactionary. You're not even going to look for your chances to attack because you're just like, oh, my knight's under attack. I better not lose my knight, so I have to move it because it's a lower value piece attacking it. So you went to f3, bishop to b4, which is a really nice move from black. They're pinning the knight. The knight's not protected by anything, so this is an extremely weak piece here. And then yeah, since it's 1-minute chess, Nathan didn't even, you can't even ask yourself like, what's my opponent's threat because the game is so quick. yeah, now before you know it, White went from just totally winning to completely lost now. And then, yeah, I guess Nathan ran out of time here or something, or I don't know if he resigned or not. But yeah, so I thought the reason I showed this game is Nathan has been asking me quite a bit about learning the Queen's Gambit, and I'm gonna do my best. I think like I showed in this video, I do know some of the nuances. Once again, this isn't an opening that I've played a ton, so I don't know if I don't have the most experience in this opening, just to be perfectly honest. But I think I know enough that I should be able to help Nathan out in learning the opening. Um, and then yeah, I also thought there was some instructive moments, especially with this knight e5 and f6 move. And then also earlier in the game when Nathan had the chance to play knight takes b5 instead of knight e5 here, I think if he would have played, or let's go back even further. Yeah, so instead of knight f3 here, which again in a 1 minute game you're just like, let's get my pieces developed, let's control the center like I was taught, let's get my king safe. But if you have some more time to think in this position, I think you're going to find this knight takes b5 move very natural, because once again, not only does it win your pawn back, but it also weakens the c4 pawn, and the a file is just completely controlled by white, so the black pawn can't capture. So yeah, this would have been the best move by far for white. And I think even in 1 minute, I think Nathan would convert this. But let's say it was like a longer game, like 10-minute game, then I would be really confident that Nathan would be able to win from here, because he will just be able to get really good activity with the bishop on c4 in the future. He's going to be able to get his knight to f3, and then it can go anywhere from there. The king is going to get castled quickly, and then if you're up a pawn, you have this the classical pawn center. So remember, these pawns are controlling these all these 4 squares. It's just going to be really hard for black to fight for control of the center. And there's kind of an expression in chess: when you're up a pawn and you're the one attacking, then your position is really good. Sometimes you have to like sacrifice a pawn to get such a great attack, but if you're up a pawn and you're the one attacking, then that's just fantastic, of course. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah, I'm not gonna make as many videos as I did during the tournament, because that was tough. But I will do my best to make a fair amount of. I'll make a decent amount of videos. Basically, whenever a game catches my eye that I think is interesting, I'll try to make a video of it. So I don't know when that will be next, to be honest. But if there's anything that's like, oh, this is a pretty cool game, and I think it's instructive for the kids, then then I feel like I want to give the kids every chance that I can for them to improve and become better chess players. So if I have the opportunity to do that by making a video over an instructive game, then yeah, I certainly will take the opportunity to do that. Yeah, great job though, Nathan. You playing very well. I have to say I'm a bit envious of how much chess Nathan is playing. Like, he really inspires me to want to play more. So I already feel like I'm playing a lot, but then I look at how much Nathan is playing and I realize like I could be doing more. So yeah, thank you for that, Nathan, and thanks for this game. I hope all the kids find it instructive. It was a pretty nice game. So yeah, thanks guys, and I'll see you guys all in class. Have a good one.